Does your game need a story? That's a question I've been thinking about a lot this week, and what I've come up with might surprise you. The obvious answer would seem to be no. There are definitely games out there that don't have any cutscenes or long exposition and don't seem to be lacking for their absence. For example, as far as I know, Tetris doesn't have any story at all, and I've never heard anyone say they just couldn't get into Tetris because of the lack of story. Nor do I really hear people say that they play a game specifically for the story. Obviously, there are the types of games that straddle that line between books and games, such as visual novels or choose-your-own-adventure books. In those cases, the story is the driving appeal. However, those games more define a gaming niche than they do highlight a common gaming attribute. When it comes to most games, I don't hear anyone saying that they're buying the game for the story even though the gameplay sucks. However, I've heard the opposite of that a lot. I watch a decent amount of gaming reviews, and games get hammered on story all the time. Cutscenes interrupt gameplay, endless scrolling text, game actions don't affect the storyline, too many plot holes, etc., etc. The story may not be the main selling point for a game, or even a selling point for a game at all, but it's definitely one more thing for people to punish your game for. Games that focus on story also face some serious challenges in the current gaming market. Unless you have a giant marketing budget, a lot of games, especially indie games, that find success in this market do so because of streamers. However, if your game focuses on a story, then viewers often get enough from watching someone play the game that they don't feel the need to buy it themselves. So even if the biggest streamer in the world plays your game, it may not result in many sales if the viewers got the gist of the story from watching the streamer. So if a story has little upside and such a large potential downside, why have a story for your game at all? This is especially true for indie game developers who have a limited amount of time and resources and often have to make hard choices about where to invest those things. The potential ROI for investing in story seems like it would be dubious at best. To understand the value of a story, I want to compare my last game to the game I'm working on right now. The gameplay in my last game was as simple as it gets. All you did was stack blocks on top of each other until you hit 54 and then you won. The gameplay in my current game is way more interesting. There are enemies and explosions. I'm working on giving a gun to the player to shoot back. There's just way more going on. However, take a look at the two games. My last game looks awesome, and I can say that because I can't take any credit for it. Everything in this game comes from assets other people created. However, it mostly fits because I created it around a central idea. My joke when building this game was that I was creating a Jenga Souls-like, and that became the story that directed the development of the game. It made choosing assets to add to the game easy. As I was building the game, I wrote a story in my head about what was happening and why based on the theme this generated. None of that story made it into the game, but it did make building the game much easier. My current game, on the other hand, doesn't have a story, and it shows. The story for this game, to the extent there is one, is that it's based on Extreme Warehousing, a game created by Zane Black for the December Completion Jam. Extreme Warehousing does have a story behind it, and you can tell. It's reflected in the design choices, from the appearance of the main menu to the flashing recording light in the corner. However, while that story worked well for a 2D top-down game, it doesn't work well for a 3D first-person game. So right now, the only story I have for the game I'm creating is that it's sort of ripping off this other game's game mechanics. That doesn't get me anywhere design-wise. So this week I've been trying to make design choices like, what am I going to do with those walls, and what am I going to replace the Unreal Mannequin with for the main character? And I don't have any answers because the game doesn't have a story yet. A couple years ago I came across this article titled, "Fortnite has the most interesting video game story in years." Some of you might be thinking, but Fortnite doesn't have a story, let alone the most interesting one. The premise for the article is that even though Fortnite doesn't have traditional storytelling mechanics, its level design and in-game events tell a story all by themselves, and they do so better than any cinematic cutscene. So coming back to the original question, does your video game need a story? My definitive answer is, you do you. Far be it from me or anyone else to tell you how to design your game. However, you might very well find that having a story for your game, even if none of that story makes it directly into the game, will make creating your game much easier and more coherent. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.